Okay, folks, we will officially get underway. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whereabouts you're attending from in the world. And I'm delighted that you are here today to learn a little bit about Litmaps. I am going to be learning along with you all this morning. So Litmaps is a new tool for me also, but I've heard such wonderful things about it. And so in the lead up to this year's Research Accelerator Conference, I reached out to the Litmaps team, and Marina very kindly got back in touch to say she would love to talk to our group. This year's Research Accelerator Conference, the theme is the idea of connections. And I felt that Litmaps, in terms of its functionality, fitted very well for that theme. And so I wanted to have this as one of the pre-conference webinars in the lead up to our big event at the start of December. So as we go through today, folks, if you have joined and you're wondering what's going on with not having webcams and microphone, etc., just a bit of admin, just to let you know that we have set this up as a Zoom webinar. So you can see Marina and I, and you can see Marina's screen there. But from your end, there are no mics, no webcams. So don't panic if you think you have not turned it off and we're going to see you sitting fiddling or anything like that. That's not the case. In terms of communicating with us, you can either send messages in the chat or there's a Q&A panel as well. And I will monitor that behind the scenes for you, Marina, and sing out if there's anything that needs attention. But will there be a little bit of time at the end for questions, actually? That's probably a good thing to check.
Certainly. So should I try to end talking around 10:45 so then there's like 15 minutes of questions? Is that
Yeah, or even 10 to the hour. Like they're an inquisitive group, just to warn you. So yeah, 10 minutes or so sounds pretty good. Um,
Mhm.
but I will hand over to Marina. I'll keep an eye on the chat on the Q&A as we go. And let's do some learning together, folks. Looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynn, and thank you for the introduction and for having me here. And thank you for the rest of you for letting me share with you a bit about Litmaps and literature review. And as we were talking earlier, just for context, so there's a lot of research tools available online, and you might already be experimenting with them. But Litmaps is basically an online literature review, literature search platform. And as Lynn and I were talking, we're actually based in Wellington. So we're just a team of 4 people in Wellington. And because we're so small, it makes this really easy for us to respond to users and to new ideas. And so if after this presentation or while you're using the app, you have any ideas or feature requests or anything comes up, definitely feel free to reach out to us on the app once we give the demo. But if you're on the app, there's a support button and you can message us very easily. So we are relatively big. We have hundreds of thousands of users around the world. However, we still have a long way to grow. So it's always great to be here and share with you a bit about the tool. And of course, in the context of literature review. So this presentation, it will discuss a little bit of literature review and then kind of the overview of that process. And then we'll look at Litmap specifically. And at the end, I can also do a brief demo online. So to dive in, I'm going to start by going over actually what is Litmaps, because I've done these presentations a lot and it seems like in the chat, even some people mentioned that you may actually have heard of it, but you haven't used it or you're very new to it. So it's good to have some context. And then we'll do an overview of the literature review process, where Litmaps fits in, and then just some more functional information like, well, as a freemium product, like how does purchasing it work? How does the free version work? What are the actual things I need to know about that? And then certainly I want to give you plenty of time for questions. So starting with what is Litmaps, we're an online freemium tool, and our main goal is to help you both search for literature as well as to visualize literature. So this can be useful in many aspects of your research. It actually goes well beyond literature review, but literature review is one of the core things we do. And so here on the right of this image, you have an example Litmap. So that dark dot in the middle is the input article, or say the starting article, the singular article from which the map is made. And these hollow dots are top connections. So we'll go into the details of what that means. But as you can see off the bat, it's a visual. We're seeing how literature is connected based on its citations and references. And we also have it spread out across, a date range. So across, the history of this research. And yeah, and our core features are searching, helping you stay organized. I saw someone left a comment in the chat about wanting to get organized, so that's great. And of course, sharing your work, sharing your lit maps, and so on. So I like to have a slide here on what makes Litmaps really different because there are so many tools. I could list out, dozens of tools that many of us here would know, many of us perhaps wouldn't know because there's just so many out there. So to give you an idea of what really distinguishes this from the litany of other tools you're using already, we are trying to combine a certain set of features that don't really exist altogether anywhere else. So each of these things you can do independently in different places. Some things you actually can't do anywhere else. But this combination is what we're really trying to do. So letting you really search in a way where you have full customizable control while also making sure it's really easy. So that's a really important thing. It's not using, say, generative AI or anything like this. It's actually using really transparent algorithms, and you can customize your search a lot. On the other hand, it can still be easy. So you don't have to do all this customization, but it's there for more advanced users, more advanced researchers. And as well as getting alerts. So if you use Google Scholar alerts or maybe PubMed does alerts, certain sites, they also do alerts where if you want to learn about new research on your topic, you'll get those emails. We also do alerts, but we do them again in a more customizable fashion. So they should be very relevant to your work. And in fact, they're based on the literature you already know. And of course, visualization. So we do visual lit maps, but you can also edit these lit maps. You can annotate them. And more often we see them in research publications used in research publications in order to demonstrate either the literature review or how that field has changed and different representations. So the core Litmaps algorithm functions based on the citation network. So the citation network refers to just all the scientific literature, but how it's connected to one another. So if you take a single scientific article and its citations and references, and you keep doing this for every single article, you quickly have this whole huge citation network of connections. And this is the network we use to generate suggestions. So given any set of article or input articles into the algorithm, we find the most relevant interconnected articles to that. And I can go over the algorithm in more detail later, but the core idea here is it's using connection. And so that's why the literature you get suggested in Litmaps tends to be very relevant because it's not just citations and references, but interconnected work. So an article you'll see suggested is something connected to maybe 3 other articles you knew and not just one. And this interconnectedness is what's really useful in order to firstly dive into a new field, but then also to widely explore that field and make sure you captured all the knowledge that's there relative to your topic. And here's an example of, this kind of, we have a huge. So the citation network itself is very big, right? It's all the millions of articles that exist today and how they're interconnected. But when it comes to your research or a particular paper, we just care about the local citation network. So we can just take one smaller piece of that puzzle, pull it up, and report it in the most useful way. So instead of diving into everything, we're really honing in on what's the most relevant to your work. As for the database, this is a really common question, so we like to talk about it up front, is the Litmaps database. So it's based off of 3 source data providers, that's Semantic Scholar, OpenAlex, and Crossref. And it's something like, probably at this point, it's probably over 280 million, but it's always increasing. So 270 million plus articles. And here's a comparison against other tools or websites you might be familiar with. So a lot of the, you might think of AI tools on the market, although they're not all using AI actually, but something like Connected Papers, Consensus, Elicit, this, or even Cite, actually this whole suite of tools, they're similar to us in the way that we all use Semantic Scholar. But the distinction is that they actually tend to use only Semantic Scholar, whereas we combine it with these 2 other databases. And this helps us not only get more articles, but then get more metadata and more well curated information for all the different articles. But as you can see, up here, Cite is almost equal to us. It's really close. And then everything else just kind of tapers down a bit. But they're all actually pretty significant coverage of literature. But the number of articles isn't necessarily the best indicator if something is relevant for you because it depends also on your domain. And so the best thing we can say right now about our coverage across domains is based on Semantic Scholar's coverage. So because Semantic Scholar is our main source, it's the biggest source of information from among these three providers. But given that its coverage is very good, we're confident that our coverage is also good. And we're planning on doing our own coverage analysis. So we would have it for Litmaps specifically. However, this is based on a publication from 2022 that was evaluating all these different top databases that scientists use to search for literature. And it determined that Semantic Scholar was actually second best for relative coverage. So it's not super heavy in medicine or super heavy in humanities. It actually has some pretty good relative coverage across disciplines. But the best way to verify this is, of course, to try Litmaps yourself, look at Semantic Scholar yourself, see if you are finding the resources that you would expect to find. And then you can also check out this paper. It's very good and has tons of figures and tons of analysis on actually all these different databases and how they rank according to different measures. And lastly, I also can touch on the other aspect of Litmaps, which is those visualizations and how people might share them in practice. So what does this actually look like day to day? You know, you can use Litmaps for your search and in the background process of your research, but you can also bring it to the forefront. And so one way we see people using this is by embedding maps. So as in this is a lit map embedded onto a website. And this particular website, they're providing basically all the relevant literature for a researcher in civic science. So in this particular discipline, what's all the research I should know about, especially like say for a graduate student who's entering this field, they create these big maps and actually share them with their audience. So that's one great example. Pretty common, we also see lit maps in publications themselves. So here is a publication where they included their lit map, as in like their literature review of this that they used within their paper, and they include a URL to it. So this we also see. Um, and of course, the figures themselves. So because lit maps are literally telling this kind of visual story and letting you see the literature very easily, as well as when you go to the URL, you can really easily click on all the papers, go to their source page. It's just a much easier way than sifting through the references manually sometimes. So these are the different ways in which, in practice, if you were really happy with your lit map and you really want to use the visual aspect, it can be shared in several different ways. And if you ever do end up sharing it, we have certain recommendations for how you can cite, which is just citing it like any other research tool. So if you use something like ChatGPT, this is often how it's recommended that we are citing them these days. Of course, mentioning the version number or the date version. You can, of course, include the URL, the images like we talked about, and we also see researchers often describe how tools work in their papers. So if you find a paper that uses, I don't know, elicit or consensus or lit maps, it will mention how it works. And so if you do describe it, I recommend you just Google like litmaps algorithms, and we have lots of documentation on this so you can check, and especially if anything changes. So I'm going to keep going with the literature review and then the litmap section, but do we want to take a quick pause if there's any questions on what I discussed so far? If that's okay, Lynn?
Yeah,
Or
there was one in the Q&A, Marina, that I actually think you might have answered, but I was doing some admin chat stuff in the background. Amanda was just asking how Litmaps compares to connected papers.
mm-hmm.
And I think you sort of touched on that on a later slide, but are you able to talk about that in a little bit more detail?
Yes, yes, great question. I should really review connected papers in more detail because I always forget like the distinctions between everyone. The core thing I could say is yeah, there's just a whole, like, we're trying to address a whole suite of features, whereas connected papers, I think, is more narrow in scope. So I would have to double check their features again just to ensure. But I'm pretty sure things like monitor, so this whole alert system that we are creating, I don't think this exists in connected papers, as well as annotating visualizations, like all of the like that's the other thing is a lot of these visual tools, they actually use the same visual search engine. So like the way the map looks, it's actually all the same in these other tools, whereas this is a custom search engine, which is why we can have customizations. That's why you can add labels, make it really pretty. So so I would say the sharing and the monitor, I think, are almost 100% unique to Litmaps, like these two combinations, as well as the customization of your search. So again, would check with connected papers. I'm pretty sure with connected papers, it's one of these columns. I just, for privacy, I don't want to include it right away to be respectful. But um, I think for example, you can search by one or more input articles. But I think these customizations that we have, which is many different kinds of filters, and you can change your algorithm in Litmaps, that's completely unique. I don't know, there's not even another tool where you can actually change your search algorithm. So it's also not to say there's anything wrong with connected papers. I think it's doing something really well. It's just a different scope of features that it's trying to address. So if that's already suiting your needs and you're really happy with that, that's great. And you can even try to put the same articles into both. But if you're actually doing it really consistently, you might see similar results. The difference is now here you can expand in these different arenas in these different areas. I would say that's probably the core distinction that I would, yeah, I would argue for.
Great answer. Fab. Thank you. And then another one that came in that I think might be something we can follow up with later. One of the groups just asking for some reference papers that demonstrate how to explain the Litmaps algorithm. So you were saying
Mm.
if you do a search on that, you'll find the explanations on your website, I think it was. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we've been meaning to eventually create like a white paper or and doing patent processing and all this. So, but for right now, yeah, I would say I can certainly share that also with you, Lynn, and afterwards and the links. But yeah, in general, if you Google, or we have a whole set of user guides and all this information, like exactly how the algorithms work. And that's kind of, yeah, I don't even include a link here because I figure, links get lost. But if you Google Litmaps algorithms, it's like the top article and you can read.
Perfect.
Mm.
That's great. And they were the only two questions so far. So yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Lynn. And thank you guys for your questions. It's very helpful. Great. Then in this next section, I'll dive into just an overview of literature review, and then we can look more specifically at the Litmaps use cases after that, just in case there are some researchers here that are more newer to literature review and to kind of frame like what are we looking at really. So here we're going to go over the basic steps in what is a traditional literature review, although this can have many contexts, right? So everyone from an undergraduate in their very first class doing a review of a topic given by an instructor, all the way up to like a very senior academic who already is quite an expert. They might still need to go back and do literature reviews. And of course, the main use case for Litmaps in general is often PhD students who are doing very intense literature reviews, and it's a very long task. And then on top of that, they need to come back to it again later. So there's many ways it looks, right? And not always going to get published, but they're an important step. And so the very first component of the review is just figuring out the question or topic, trying to get this defined and clear, which, will certainly, as we'll see, we'll connect later in the process. You might come back to this step, but trying to at least figure this out first is the key. And of course, searching. So searching for all the relevant literature, ensuring you actually can find all the publications that are going to be on this topic that help answer this question. Evaluating the sources. So simply finding literature is not enough, especially today. We know there is a huge amount of papers, but also the journals they're coming from. We know there's journal mills. There's a lot of challenging stuff to go through, but we need to evaluate the sources to make sure they're actually the papers we want to use, and to understand the distinctions from among the literature we've collected, like what's high quality, what's low quality. Reading and analyzing all this literature, oh, don't envy you. This is an intense part. A lot of hours here. Staying organized, keeping track of all the literature you have collected can be hundreds of articles. Sometimes we work with people who are doing systematic reviews. This can be thousands of articles or over 1,000, and they actually do need to keep track of every single one and review it. Writing the literature review, whether that's something for your personal notes in your paper's introduction or your paper yourself is a literature review. There's many options there. And finally, citing and referencing, which is tightly correlated with staying organized. It's all many components here that are both technical and theoretical, like, the more intellectual of how your topic works, but also the practical of citing and referencing. They all play into how effortless or how tedious a literature review can be. And of course, it's not linear at all. It really is mixed together, super jumbled, very messy, and we're always skipping between steps and going back and forth. And that's really why there's many, many tools that do exist. And that's why also Litmaps exists, because this process is very hard, but a lot of things can be streamlined and they can also be merged together. So that way, if you are jumping between, reading and needing to cite, you can do this faster or you can do this more seamlessly. And that's what certain tools try to address. And so with Litmaps, we're really aiming to address these 4 steps. So something like writing, we don't deal anything with writing, but we are trying to really help with the searching, the evaluation, organizing, and this whole citation and referencing section of the work. And so in this section, I'll go into 3 particular use cases, which are I would say, the top ways that Litmaps can support a literature review, starting with like diving into a brand new review. So how would I start a new review on a topic? Then how can I do a comprehensive search? So this is if you already have some papers on your topic, you may have some knowledge and now you want to really ensure you didn't miss anything. That's ensuring really good coverage and really good comprehension. And lastly, trying to stay organized and cited. And I can also touch on the visualizations and this kind of, say, bonus section of things. So when starting literature review, it's useful to think about it in terms of what are the classic problems we have and how do we try to fix this, or how do we try to make it easier for ourselves. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed. Even for senior researchers today, you're having so many papers come out. So even if you're checking the journal that you know is a great journal, you're still going to have so many articles to look through. It can be very overwhelming. Of course, for the junior researchers, it's very hard to enter a new field. It's just so much information. So yeah, information overload. And just seeing how things connect. So this is something I think, especially for students, can be really hard, that you might start to enter a subject and understand it, but then seeing how the different articles are actually connected to each other and what's like the real story can be really, it can be very confusing at first. So we try to address this overwhelmingness by just having a really clear search strategy. So without worrying about trying to cover everything right away, just having a clear set of steps that we can at least enter the literature through and start to identify most relevant papers and just start to slowly read in the order that's actually useful. This simple search strategy is something we can discuss. And of course, as a part of that, we need to find what's the most important papers and read those first. So not spending too much time going through things unnecessarily. And of course, the whole point of the Litmap is that you can visualize connections. So you can very clearly see how research connects. And then as a bonus later on, we can see how you can even have different categories and you can see how these connect and really telling a bigger research story. So I'll just go through all this presentation, like through the slides, and then at the end I can do a brief demo, just so we don't flip back and forth too much. But this is a video just showing how I do the very first search in Litmap. So I just hit search. I can type in keywords on my topic, find an initial starting paper or one or more. Here I select 2, and then just click explore. And this is kind of the beginning of the simple search strategy. It's just to say I have my topic. I'm going to find at least just one relevant article on it, just one that seems useful and relevant. And then from here, I'm going to explore that article's lit map. And again, the lit map is the top most interconnected articles on this topic. So that's why it's so useful, because it's not just showing me, oh, this article and everything else about it. It's really already honing in on some specific niche that article is addressing. Like it was relevant to this particular research. So that's the first step to our simple search. And then the second step is really using the Litmap to identify papers faster. So Litmaps themselves, you can change them, but by default, they're sorted based on the date of publication on the x-axis and citation count on the y-axis. So you can rather intuitively deduce where different articles would be. So in the top left of the image, you often are finding the most highly cited work, which tends to be more historical. So this is something that's a really good paper to start reading if you were brand new to the field and you want to see, oh, this was this pivotal paper up here, that's a great place to start. Whereas towards the bottom right, we're going to see more recent work. It's less cited, but it's more recent. So if we're actually interested in finding the most cutting edge work and we're actually very familiar with the field, this is where we tend to go in the visual. And we'll see later in the demo I can show you, but these axes can be changed to prioritize different measures. This image doesn't quite do it justice, but we can also save articles with tags. So that's a way to stay organized. We can have different categories, different niches and subtopics that we keep track of using the maps. And when it comes to spotting important papers fast, that's what I just touched on with this highly cited work in the top left. And this, we sometimes call them seminal works, or like they were very important contributions to a field. And these often will pop up in the top left of these maps. And finally, when it comes to visualizing connections, so the map itself, we already can see a lot, learn a lot from this. But the other very interesting thing is you can take any of these articles and always generate an its lit map. So there's kind of, I think, almost two use cases. So one is seeing many different articles. So you can have many articles that you are already aware of. So say you already have a collection, you can visualize all those and analyze your work. But if you're actually really new and you're exploring something here, you can just dive into each individual paper's lit map and see its scope. So for example, this is a map where this paper is in the middle. It's the seed, it's the starting paper. And here, this is maybe where I came from. So I was on another map where I was having another article as the input, and this was a suggestion. And it's really easy for me to just keep generating new maps and seeing the same article in different contexts. So we might say, oh, this was another work and this is relevant. But then when I explore this paper in detail, I see, oh, it's actually in a totally different research context. And that's actually ultimately another cool takeaway from Litmaps is interdisciplinary work and seeing how it connects and what other fields a particular paper might be impacting. So the second step here is this doing a comprehensive search. And for this, I'll again dive into the challenges and how we're trying to address those with Litmaps. So a comprehensive search kind of just refers to any time where you want to actually ensure your literature review is really completely done in a sense. And sometimes you hear questions that are like, how many papers should I have in literature review or something like that? It actually comes down more to, yeah, your coverage and are you confident you didn't miss anything important? And these are almost, in a sense, unanswerable and they're very hard to answer. But we can at least do certain things that give us a huge amount more confidence that we are doing well. And this is where searching based on connection is really powerful because we know if we take, you may at this point already have 30 articles or 100 and can say, you can keep doing keyword searches independently, but it's so much more useful to use what you know. So taking these 100 articles and saying, hey, based on these and all of the articles in their citation network, is there anything I missed? And that's exactly what we recommend to search on a library. And again, using that customizable search. So that's what I can demonstrate in the demo, but we have many different filters, ways to change the search algorithm. So instead of, say, relying on something ambiguous, or not ambiguous, but say a tool that do you understand exactly how it searches, or even a search database, because you tend to have to use many, many keywords and you have to try really hard from many different angles to see if you missed anything. This is where using customizable filters and targeting your search can be really useful because you can just hone in quickly and be like, okay, look, I have searched based on my 100 articles and this keyword and nothing came out. So that actually gives me a lot of confidence that I did a really good job with the coverage here. And lastly, getting out of date. So this is can be solved using automatic alerts. You can continue to search indefinitely, so you can always take your literature and search on it manually every single week until it's time to publish, but it's so much easier to just make it an alert system. And this is actually available even in the free version of Litmaps before it was something that was only paid. So even now, yeah, if you have a good map and you'd like to be up to date on work, definitely at least use this alert system because It's the easiest way to just know if there's anything new that's come out that's actually connected to your existing work. So when it comes to searching on a library, this is just the first step to doing it, which is going to the app. And there's a simple import button there that you can drop in your article, whether it's a BibTeX, RIS, PubMed. You can do manual imports. So if you have like a list of DOIs, this often can be challenging if you have just like a very unorganized set of papers somewhere. But because there's so many importing options, it should hopefully not be so hard. And once, of course, they're in the app, then you can start curating collections and so on. And for some individuals here, perhaps you already use a reference manager. You can very easily import, export out of reference managers. So something like EndNote, Mendeley, Zotero, I think PaperPile is a reference manager. But here we have one bonus feature for if you use Zotero in particular, we have a perfect Zotero integration. So that means if you set it up, you just have one-to-one integration. You don't have to worry. You just automatically can have all of your papers in both places, and it's much easier to manage, but it's not essential. All the reference managers work. Mhm. And so with the customizable search, so say I've brought in my 100 papers that I have so far collected over the last week, and now I want to say, okay, look, I want to continue, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything, but I want to be targeted because often as you get deeper and deeper in literature review, you're going to start seeing many different directions of research. I mean, it's just endless in all directions. So the more I can target and funnel this on specific things, the easier it gets. And that's the whole idea of these different filters. So we'll review it in the app, but here, these filters are going to limit my suggestions. So it will take all of my input papers, find, again, the top most interconnected papers, and then filter the results based on this. So either the date of publication, newer work, historic work, any specific keywords in their title or abstracts, or specific authors. If I get quite familiar with the field, then I actually can know, this author, I really want to see more work by them. And of course, with journals, this is a new section we've really built out the last couple months. So you can filter on specific journals like Nature, Cell Biology, whatever specific titles. But you can also just do it based on what we think of as like journal quality. So the H index and the SJR quartiles. So if you are, say, now you've done some searching and you want to make sure you didn't miss anything, you can set, okay, let me put 2022 as a minimum year, maybe any specific keywords that are essential, maybe focusing on the SGR 1 and 2 filters, 1 and 2 quartiles. And you can kind of imagine that there's a way that you can very quickly pinpoint, these are the papers I want now. Now that I'm a bit familiar with my field, I know a bit what I'm looking for, I can hone in quite faster. And here I think here's an algorithm example. So this is something I've mentioned, but we didn't talk about in detail, but we can change the Litmaps algorithm. So in general, this whole presentation and almost all the time, I just talk about this one because that's our default and most users are only ever aware of this one. And that's the top interconnected articles. However, we can change it to these two other options, and that's it's very useful. But because it's so atypical in apps, we find many people aren't aware of it. But these can be useful for different reasons. So we can change the algorithm here to common authors. So what will happen is instead of just doing interconnections, it's actually going to do interconnections based on co-authors. So that's saying for my set of 10 papers, say there's these certain authors that tend to work together on different papers, and they're starting to show up as like this common lab or this group that's making contributions to my field. It's going to find me other work that they have also published together. So that's quite an advanced way of thinking about it. But as you get more and more familiar with the field, you might really want to hone in on the research that's coming out of certain groups, and common authors is a good way to do that. And similar text, this final algorithm that you can change to, this is just searching based on the semantic similarity of the paper's titles and abstracts. So this uses AI to review all the abstracts and titles of all the papers in the Litmaps database and compare them to your input papers and find what's relevant. And so these can be kind of complementary in a way that on the one hand, you want to search by connection, you want to see if you missed anything. But on the other hand, at a certain point, you actually just want to search on everything. You want to perhaps say, actually, for this moment, connection isn't relevant, and I want to search based on anything that could be similar. And that, of course, can be useful once you already have curated a huge set of papers. then you want to go ahead and say, yeah, I actually understand my field well. I've explored it through connection. I'm confident with this. Like, let me see everything that's out there that could be relevant. And here's just an example of what that can look like. So here's a filter from 2018 onward, and I can change this author, the keywords. And this is an example bitmap in the background where these three dark dots are the input papers and all the white ones, those are the recommendations. And lastly, on the comprehensive search, I'll also mention the monitoring. So this is the alert system we talked about. So for any map that we have some articles saved there, we can go to the maps homepage and click Enable Automatic Monitoring. And what this does is every week we will automatically search using this map. So generally what you do is you click explore related articles and that's you doing the search. So it's that process that we're automating. It's very simple. It's just that we're going to run that search for you every single week. And the reason it's weekly is because that's when we update our database. So every week we have at least 200,000 new articles added. It's a huge amount, hundreds of thousands. And so from among these articles, that's really why we want to keep rerunning this, is just in case, oh, this new article got published and it's actually super related. And that's what we're going to see in these email updates here. And we can look at it in more detail later, but you can also change this. So there's a lot of settings. So all these filters and configurations we saw, these can be adapted as well. But by default, it's just looking for any top connections to my input articles. Cool. And the last section, before I can do a quick demo, is just about the visualizations here. So here I have an example map, and we can talk a little bit about the power of organizing, citing, and visualizing, whether it's in Litmaps or just in general. But here's an example map I have made using Litmaps, and I have different tags denoting different categories. And the tagging is something I do. So it's a lot like if you have Mendeleev's or Tarot and you have different collections or groups, that's something that we curate as researchers. And so that's what I've done here. And in the bottom right, I actually have also created this little star article. And that's the idea here that I'm trying to come up with is that's my new article. So say I just created a new work. It uses all of these papers as my references. And I'm showing, hey, look, this is my contribution. It's how it connects to everything. And this is how they all connect to one another as well. And we can organize this in many different ways. We can actually also manually move things around. And that's to try and tell the story of, well, in this particular literature review, how does it all connect? And perhaps at a certain year, a certain new methodology came out and this impacted the literature. I can try to visualize all this here. With regards to citations, so if you're using a reference manager, that's probably the best way to always do citations and references. It's just much easier to manage. So I mean, when you go to write up your paper and now it comes time to need to attribute everyone, this is something reference managers do really well. However, you can also do a lot of citation work in Litmaps itself. So you can always export a single article. You can export, I think here, a whole set of articles. So all the articles from your map or from a tag, you can export as a bibtec or other file format. And it's just an easy way to, again, try to letting you get the most out of a single area rather than jumping between many different tools. You can try and do as much as you can from the one spot. And as we talked about way earlier in the presentation, sharing. So sharing is just a simple share button, and we can share the map by pictures, by URLs, many different ways. Great, and it's 11:40, and I know we wanted to finish hopefully by 11:50 for your questions. So I'll just do 1 minute on the plans just so that there's some understanding here, and then I'll dive into the app. So yeah, so as a freemium tool, we have this free pro distinction. So we have also actually an anonymous side that doesn't matter. So if you have a free account, this is kind of the starting point is you sign up for free. And even on a free account, you can do a huge amount of searching. So I would definitely encourage you to do it on the free tier where you can create maps, you can search, you can find many articles, you can do almost all the visualization things I spoke about, you can actually do on a free map. It's very easy. The Pro map or the Pro account comes in handy when you want to do more advanced things. So anything like these search filters, very advanced monitoring settings, or if you have a very large amount of articles that you're working with. So here we have up to 100 articles on a map. If you have beyond this, this is where Pro comes in handy. And of course, we also do things like team licenses, universities, and many other uh, methods as well. So you can always get in touch with us about that. Yes, and here's his country parity, but I think unfortunately New Zealand we do not have, so we'll gloss over that. But we do country parity pricing. So if you have any collaborators across the world, so yeah, many countries here you can imagine that have lower cost of living, and so they are having certain discounts. And this is just calculated at checkout. So if you find yourself somewhere else, you might experience this, but otherwise in New Zealand we do have the full price, which I have actually don't even know if I have it here. It's something like 10. Yeah, we'll check on the site together, but it's about maybe 10 USD a month. And the last thing I want to share also is a resource about Litmap. So this is just another free resource that's essentially like what we're doing today, but it's more designed for instructors. So this is an online set of materials I made that's designed to help instructors who are teaching with Litmaps in the classroom. And that's what we see more and more is actually, so say an instructor wants to teach fundamental research methods and they're doing literature review and they want to understand like how research connects with their undergraduates, they might be using Litmaps. And so this is just a place you can go to check on litmaps.com if you look at Teach with Litmaps. And here's just lecture slides, a course outline, and it's just some materials to use for that context. So I think next I can do a quick app demo and then we can go into questions. So that's good.
Just while you're switching over there, Marina, we've got lots of folk in the group who are lecturers at various universities. So I think that resource will be very helpful if they decide to integrate that to their classroom teaching. It's a great idea.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great to hear. Yeah, that's definitely the goal. Can you see the screen? Okay, then? Okay, great. So yeah, this is the app. So I'll maybe start a new workspace just so you can see it as the way you would see it when you log in for the first time. So we're here on the app and we can get started just by going into here and searching for, well, any keywords, a specific paper you know, or so on. I'll just use example topic. And as we mentioned earlier, here's the import button. So if you're already coming here with a huge set of articles or a curated library, you can click import, drop in your file, or use the Zotero sync option here. And so here I've searched for those keywords and I can look through the recommendations. So depending on your research background, you might want to already go through each of these in detail and you're very, you're quite keen to immediately start diving into that. And that's definitely an option. And for every relevant one, checking it off and saying, oh yeah, that's relevant. I want to include that in my map. If, on the other hand, you're a bit newer to the field and you're facing that sense of overwhelmingness that we all tend to face when we're like, oh, there's so many articles, look, 147,000, I'll never get through this. If that's the attitude, then generally what I recommend here for that simple search strategy is really our goal is just to dive into this topic from a good angle. So I've searched based on these keywords. I see this very first paper actually has a relevant title. It has 66 references, 207 citations. I can see it like right from the UI. And so because these are pretty good high numbers, then I know if I'm going to do a search based on connection, I'm going to find pretty good results. So the only real rule here for someone starting research is you just don't want to pick anything with too small citations or references because the default algorithm, as we discussed, searches based on connection. So the idea here is how can I enter this field? Doesn't mean I'm going to stay here forever, but I just want to enter this field from an article that's really well connected so I can immediately start analyzing it and seeing the bigger picture. So here I can see, oh, looks like a great paper. I'll just go ahead and click explore related articles to create that article's lit map. And from here, we actually have a tutorial that walks you through it as well, but that's the input article. And here are recommendations in the hollow dots. And as I alluded to earlier, some of these articles, they are not citations or references, right? So this whole cluster down here, none of these are actually directly connected to my source article, but they come up because they're co-citations and because they're interconnected. So they all have connections to other, like this one, for example, has two connections to other references on my map. So these are articles that my article referenced. And so that's why it can be super relevant to me. And by the title, I can see, oh yeah, it actually looks like it can be relevant. And yeah, that's just showcasing like what kind of suggestions you can anticipate finding. That's kind of, I would say, step one of the simple search. And then step two is expanding this map. And so the next step here is perhaps we've read this paper, you can click on it and go to the source page and read it and do so with all these other relevant papers. And when I found one that I find is relevant to my topic, I can just click more like this and it gets added to the map. And that's all it takes to start growing a lit map and getting more refined results. Because more papers I have, it's going to really start entering this field of research and exploring from there. And to rerun the search, I just hit refresh and it will rerun based on these two inputs now, which changes all my suggestions because it's a whole new calculation. And here are the filters that, again, I can hone in on. So if I want to just look at recent work, which often we might tend to do, looking at 2020 and later, and can rerun the search again. So it's this kind of iterative process of saying, here's my topic, here's a relevant paper, and growing on it from there. And lastly, I can also demonstrate how we would slowly start to learn how to stay organized within the Litmaps ecosystem, and that involves tagging. So it also is worth noticing, by default, it's all saved. So, right, so here on the far left, I have my list of Litmaps, and I can see that's the name of the paper I started with. So it's saved. Like this map is saved. I have two articles on it. If I click on the articles on this map, I can see them there. So it's all tidy as long as it's saved on the Litmap. But if I want to go a step further and use those colors and visuals, then I can click on it and use the tagging functionality. So here it says tag. And so I'll make a new tag here and give it a particular subtopic or niche, or perhaps you want to separate like theory from methods from case studies. So whatever is useful for your research, but you can start annotating those articles and keeping track of them with tags. And that's the color I see here. And it shows up here on the left. And yeah, I'll hop on over to what is a more built out example of that. Let's see. This is the one I often use here that we showed you in the presentation. But once I do that continuously for some time, I tend to get a very well curated set of articles, and it's more built out. And I can really see how different categories tend to shape out on the timeline. Okay. I can probably demo indefinitely, but I'll cut myself off there in case there's any questions for these final 10 minutes. But yeah, thank you all so much for your patience and for having me here. And I hope this was useful for your next literature review.
Oh, I think it will be, Marina. There's been a lot of excitement in the chat as you were presenting, and there are quite a few questions. So it's great if we had a bit of time to tackle those. But yeah, I can imagine that you could easily demo that endlessly because there's a whole heap of functionality there. Lots of fun
Yeah.
and usefulness as well. Now, I've just popped a message in the chat, folks. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer now, if you could pop that into the Q&A, just so it's a bit easier for me to keep track of it, because the chat got very busy there, particularly with the color coding. The color coding got, yeah, a ridiculous amount of excitement, which doesn't surprise me knowing who's here today. So yeah, pop questions in the Q&A so that I can ask Marina them. Now, okay, right. I'm going to start at the top. Uh, Quite a few of us, Marina, got rather excited about the Zotero syncing. So there's quite a few of this group, myself included, that are big Zotero users. But Jane has asked, because obviously there are other tools being used, EndNote is being used by quite a lot of this group actually. Have you got any plans to build integrations for other reference management software other than Zotero, or is Zotero sort of the only one that you're planning?
Yes, yes. It's great to hear that there's so many EndNote users. Yeah, I think EndNote and Mendeley are definitely the top two on our radar that, yeah, we would absolutely have them done today if we had more time. So yeah, that's certainly the ones we would really want to do next. So yeah, we can never know because we're so small and always hustling. But I would say in the next few months, yeah, just check back in routinely and we really are quite keen to do them. But that being said, if you do use any other reference manager, then the core way is just using BibTeX, right? So going to EndNote, right click export BibTeX and then dropping that in here. But yeah, that's the most yeah, the only annoyance is that with these other ones we need to do is importing, exporting, whereas with Zotero it does have this auto sync feature.
Yeah, that's slick. I really like that because I think one of the issues when you are working with multiple tools in the literature review process is that you've got to have very clear workflows in place as things move from one to another. So if the syncing is there, that removes the need for you to have to manually keep track of it as the researcher. So yeah, that's super exciting. Great to hear though that there are potentially other plans, and I can very much relate to what it's like being a small business and trying
Yeah.
to tackle everything. So that's great. Now, related to Zotero, Yvonne has asked a great question. If you have tags in Zotero, did they come across into Litmaps?
That's a good question. Ultimately you can. Oh, sorry. If you have tags in Zotero, can I pull those up in Litmaps? That's the
Yeah,
question.
and vice versa as well.
Mhm. Yeah, so the way it works is you're kind of syncing from Zotero to here. So if I think this one is synced appropriately. I just have many workspaces, so it's a bit chaotic for me. But here, this collection, this is in my Zotero place, in my Zotero vault. I always forget what it's called. So this is coming from here. So if I do a search here and add articles, they'll pop up over here in Zotero. But the idea is because we're syncing from Zotero, yeah, if you have made a really awesome Litmaps tag and it has all the literature you like, you can't just press a button and put it in. Instead, what you need to do is go to Zotero, create a new empty tag, go to sync, create a new Zotero sync tag. So something like this, I go to my sync, I click create tag, I do this, I create tag, and then drop the article. So it's a little bit roundabout. So it's definitely doable, it just takes a few extra clicks, but it's built very much like Zotero coming into here. Like let's bring in the Zotero tag into here. So this will take a bit of time to sync. But otherwise, then at this point, I would just take all these and essentially move them into the other tag. So it works both ways, but it's this one direction is the most fluid.
Right. And yeah, I just actually reread Yvonne's question. It was actually, do the tags go from Litmaps into Zotero? But it sounds like it goes both ways, but one direction's more efficient.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can definitely do both ways. Yeah, it's just the one way is like 4 more clicks, and then the other way is just really easy. Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Fabulous. I can't wait to play around with that Zotero functionality, actually.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Right. Lots of other questions. If you are working in a very niche area and there's only a really tiny number of papers to begin with, how well does Litmaps handle that? I know you did touch on that briefly in your presentation, but are you able to say any more about that particular question?
Sure. So if it's a really niche area, I mean, there's kind of a few things. So it was like a more niche topic. Like oftentimes when we get into some very niche humanities topic, that can kind of help be a good example. So I guess there's a few challenges. So A, if you have any starting article, then already that's great because that the point is it doesn't matter how big this field is and because the field tells us how big it is. So if this paper really has just 22 citations, 23 references, well, this is just not a field people are publishing very much. So I can explore from here and the job I can do here maybe it's just the same as if I was on any other platform because of the limitation of this field. But of course, the question is, well, is the field limited or is it the database coverage? And that comes down, I guess, to, yeah, of course, knowing what other websites or resources you should use. But I would say, yeah, the that when it comes to mine, the main challenge is like if these numbers are low, you just get fewer suggestions probably because again, it's based on connections. So this article, I take its citations, its references, and um the citations of its references. That's what we call co-citations. So even so, this article probably this map was built based on at least 100 papers. So actually way more, even hundreds, not just those 40 citations and references. So yeah, I guess I don't have a really clear answer other than that actually probably comes down more to understanding, is it a limitation of database coverage or actually just this field is small? And I think that we have to know the other databases to know if it's the first answer, in which case, yeah, definitely we should be using, say, obviously, maybe very specific religious studies maybe needs more primary sources that are not even going to be peer-reviewed publications or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, that is a nice lead into the next question. Um, will Litmaps also find policy or government documents?
Oh, okay, policy or government. Um, that's a great question. Maybe I'll think about it and follow up by email. But I would say probably it might have some, but it probably is not going to be as strong in that. I mean, we even have patents, we have case studies, like we have a huge variety of data.
Mm,
But the primary kind of data is all peer-reviewed, published papers. So even things like preprints, like Archive itself, the website Archive has tons of stuff that's not even fully published, right? They're preprints. So I know there's many categories that we don't necessarily fully accommodate because it's this peer-reviewed published articles. But that's what also makes the search, yeah, can be useful in this degree because, okay, I'm getting everything that's already been peer-reviewed, so it's high quality, to some degree. But yeah, that's a good question. I will actually check on that one because I think I have seen some, but I don't think it's going to be anything like Google Scholar, which has like curated the whole internet.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, wonderful. Now, Kelly's asked a really good question. Is there a log of prior searches in case you refresh the screen and lose articles you may have wanted to look at?
Yes, I think so. I think this is what we have when we're considering the lit maps themselves. So a log of prior searches. So this kind of search area, if I'm doing keywords and doing maps, none of this is saved. This is kind of all temporary. It's a bit like being in Google Scholar and just searching for something. However, all of your maps, they're always saved. So whatever I'm doing here, this is saved. The key thing to always keep in mind, though, because it might be a bit of a learning curve sometimes, is this dark dots, they are saved to my map. So I'll never lose them. If I go to articles, they live there and they're saved indefinitely when I add them to the map. But all these hollow dots are not saved. So that's the only thing that's not saved. And everything in tags is of course saved and so on.
That makes sense thinking about it like internet
Mhm.
searches that you do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, now, I think Yvonne and I might have been thinking along the same lines in terms of, oh, actually, no, Yvonne's question's around import, and I had a question about export. So let's ask both of those in the same go. So I'm going to take a stab in the dark here and assume that there's probably nothing in Litmaps that will do things like adjust capitalization on journal titles or anything like that. That's sort of more of a reference management tool kind of thing.
Um, yeah, it's nothing like this. It's just kind of the simple import export of BibTeX is
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, so unfortunately it's quite simple like this.
And then my related question to that was, as part of the session, or you showed that you could export. You made the point that reference management software is a better bet for citations, but that you could export out. Do you have any control over the formats that you can export the references out? Like, is it APA format or Harvard, or what sort of style gets used?
Okay, well, from the application, we can so in thinking in terms of both imports and exports, we can export as a BibTeX, RAS, or CSV. And so, of course, if we want to ultimately export as like an APA or MLA or anything like that, we go through a reference manager, so in something like Zotero. But for importing, we actually have quite a lot of, you can do a lot of manual importing, so you can import from many different styles, and I think including APA. So it's just in the import section under manual import, and there you have way more options of these kinds of things.
Perfect. And then there's two final questions that I think are going to be super quick. Are you okay time-wise, Marina, to go slightly over?
5 more minutes. This is, yeah.
Yeah, I think both of these are going to be super quick. So Pavana's asked, does Litmaps have a feature to help organize the map in a circle, or is it done outside the platform? Now, my understanding is it's done in Litmaps, isn't it? Like that's what the tool is. You were doing that inside the app.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Here I can even show here. But yes, it's done inside the application. It's just a different view. So by default, we have this view where it's all like this map layout because of how the axes are sorted. But if you have many, many articles, it'll default to the circle. Otherwise, you click recommendations, and these are the different ways we can review it. So this ring is the circle way of representing. And even here, it actually is sorted still, but it's just on a smaller scale.
I mean, that's just the options for visualization I'm
Yes.
really very grabbed by those. I've got
Oh,
to,
great,
yeah,
great. Yeah, people love the ring. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. And then I think this is also going to be a quick one. Deborah's asked what you were referring to, and this might have been on a slide maybe or on the website, what the detailed citation-based network graph offers. That's actually the maps, I'm assuming.
Detailed citation-based graphs.
I'm not sure where
Right.
Deborah saw that.
Hmm. Sorry, say it one more time. Sorry.
Detailed citation-based network graphs.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah, can you maybe pop in the chat a message if you're still here to let us know what exactly or where you saw that? Because both Marina and I are a bit confused by that question. So if you could give us some clarification, that would be great.
Mm,
Um,
I can at least think that on the one hand, perhaps if you want to see a single article's citations like this, we can see. So if I click on this, oh, wait, sorry, I went to its source. If I click citations, then we get this kind of secondary view, and this is just the article and all of its citations. So this is, you can say, a citation-based graph. I mean, all of our maps are all reference and citation-based,
yeah.
but this one in particular is just looking at those, and I can filter them, and you can do a lot of work because, of course, many of you are interested in just these. You're interested in the citations.
And Deborah's just confirmed that was what she was asking
Okay,
about.
great.
So spot on. And I'm going to just take one final question and then we'll let you get on with your day, Marina. Loving all the excitement with these questions. Yvonne has asked if you can see more than author and date on the graph.
Hmm. Yeah, so right now that part is yeah, there is no real customization for that. It's visibly we can see that. And then if I do the hover, I can see the title. And then if I click, I can see the details. So it's kind of these three layers. But what I can say is if you get into wanting to adjust maps or let me answer this view. If I want to get into editing and annotating, you can change these labels. So I can click on the node and click on this label. Or has it? Oh, it's the paintbrush is like the customization. And then here I can do like this kind of custom label. So if you were wanting to spend some time to annotate things, you can edit them and I could write something like, notes for myself in a sense if I wanted to annotate them like this.
Yep, Yvonne's pretty delighted with that. She's a very excited reaction in the chat there. Okay,
Awesome. Mhm.
wonderful. Well, look, folks, I'm sure you could probably keep Marina here all day asking questions, but we had better wind ourselves up. Thank you so much, Marina. I loved how knowledgeable you were, not just about the product, but also the entire literature review process. And it was really lovely to see you make those connections between the two. And what a great way to kick us off in the lead up to the conference. I mean, connections are at the center of this product. So that was just absolutely perfect as well. So I think you'll have a whole bunch of interested punters as a result of this morning's webinar. So just thank you so much again for your time and sharing this with us. I think everyone's found it really useful.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me, Lynn. Thank you all so much for your patience. And yeah, I hope the conference goes fantastic.
Thank you so much. I'll be in touch.
Cool. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Lovely. Bye, everyone.